everybody, and welcome back to my channel. Today's video is going to be all about love, and that is because, of course, Valentine's Day is coming up, so I wanted to give some romance book recommendations. A lot of these books are books that I have had on my shelf. I've actually got 10 recommendations on my list, and 7 of those I have on my shelf, and the rest of them I actually have on my Kindle. All romance books that I highly recommend. There are a lot of romance books that I read, but not all of them are books that I would say are super good. These ones I would say are super good and are worth the read. The first book that I'm actually going to start off with today is a Valentine's Day romance book, and that is The Do-Over by Lynn Painter. This book is almost like Groundhog's Day, except our main character keeps waking up and it's Valentine's Day, and it is the worst Valentine's Day that you could imagine. She finds out her boyfriend's cheating, they break up, and she has to go through that entire thing over and over and over. You would think reading the same thing over and over and over would get crazy repetitive and boring. I loved this book and read it in a day. I sat down and read this book in one day and would reread it. Another Lynn Painter book, and my absolute favorite Lynn Painter book, is Better Than the Movies. This is another young adult romance book by Lynn Painter, and this story is just wholesome and sweet and wonderful. We have our quirky main character Liz, who loves romance movies. It's fake dating. It's one of the best romance books I think I've ever read. I love this book. I bought it for my sister for Christmas a couple years ago. She sat down and she read it in I think 2 days, and she had not picked up a book in years. So this would be great for anybody who is trying to get into reading, trying to get into romance, and again, it's young adult, so there is no spice. Next, we have The 7-Year Slip by Ashley Poston. This book has an element of magical realism. Our main character, Clementine, moves into her aunt's apartment, and the apartment is magical. The apartment, you could open the door and walk in one day, and all of a sudden you are 7 years in the past. It's never explained why, but because of that, she ends up meeting somebody from 7 years in the past that is staying in the apartment, and a little romance sparks. I do think there were a couple spicy scenes, or maybe a spicy scene, but I would not consider this a spicy book. This is just more of a wonderful, magical, beautiful relationship, and it also talks a lot about self-growth, self-fulfillment, and the little nickname that he comes up for her. And the little nickname that he has for her is so cute, so adorable, and I think about this book a lot. Next, we have a book that was just mentioned in my physical TBR video, and that is Daydream by Hannah Grace. I finally read this, knocked it off my physical TBR, and it is my favorite book in this series. I'm not sure if this series has any... Oh, the Maple Hills series. As an oldest daughter, it kind of hurt. There were some lines specifically about being an oldest daughter, but also someone who kind of struggles with, organizing my mind sometimes. I tabbed it. I put tabs on my favorite parts. I think there's 4 tabs in here. This book was so good. If you haven't read Icebreaker or Wildfire, or maybe those two don't sound good to you, I wouldn't say you have to read them to get to this one. Those will just give you information on characters that are kind of involved in the background of this one. So these 2 characters, Henry and Henry and Hallie. First of all, that sounds so cute. I love this book, and this is a book I would absolutely recommend to anybody, especially an oldest daughter, but it is spicy. It's spicy. It's got a couple scenes. It's got a few scenes. Next, we have one of my all-time favorite romance books. This is a book that I read last year, and it was one of my first 5-star books of the year. And that is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. This is the only Abby Jimenez book that I have read. I need to get on it and read her other books because this book was perfection. I was crying in the end, and it's beautiful. We have our main character, Emma, who is a travel nurse, and she ends up meeting a guy named Justin through Reddit, of all places, and they share what they call like a curse, that if they date somebody and they break up, the next person that person they broke up with gets with, or the I'm explaining this so poorly. If they're dating somebody and they break up, the next person that their ex dates is who they're going to marry. And so they believe that they're cursed. And because of that, they decide that they're going to fake date or to date and see if they can break each other's curses. The male main character in this book was amazing. The whole story was just so sweet, so good, and I love this book. It does have a scene or two of spice, so if you are spice adverse, I would say skip those scenes because the rest of the story is 100% worth it. Another wonderful book is Love Theoretically by Ali Hazelwood. This is really, I think, the only Ali Hazelwood book that I have 100% enjoyed. I give this one 5 stars. And I think it was actually my first Ali Hazelwood book, if I'm not mistaken. She works as someone who fake dates people. She starts working with a guy named Jack at her big girl job as a theoretical physicist. Theoretical physicist? Yeah. And Jack is the brother to one of her like clients that she has been a fake girlfriend for. So he's like instantly suspicious of her because he thinks she's lying. She's trying to play it off. There are some spicy scenes. So again, if you're spice adverse, I would say skip those because the rest of the story is worth it. But this book was beautiful. And I love the way Ali Hazelwood incorporates STEM into her books because I do feel like I'm learning. Like, I'm reading this and I'm like, oh, kicking my feet over the cute little romance, but I feel like I'm learning about being a theoretical physicist. Last of my physical books, we have Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren. This book had me crying my eyeballs out. It's about Macy and Elliot, and they have been friends. It's about Macy and Elliot, and they have been friends since they were children, and it's kind of just about their relationship as children and how they came to care about each other and how they were friends, and then just how that has evolved to the point that they're at now, and where they are kind of having to reconnect because they fell out over something that happened. Her heart will hurt. That's it. And it's beautiful and it's sad and it's wonderful, and this book is amazing. I need to reread it, honestly, because I love this book so much. Now we are going to move over to the books that are on my Kindle. The first book that we have on my Kindle is Before Us by Jewel E. Ann. It looks just like this, except the cover in real life is pink. Or if you have a color screen Kindle, it would be pink. This book, at the 20% mark, had me sobbing. There's a bit of an age gap in this romance, but it was not something that affected me or like bothered me as someone who typically does not enjoy age gap. It dealt with grief and heartache and also just personal growth outside of a relationship so that you can then be in a relationship. I loved it way more than I thought I would. My friend picked this book out as a book club book last year, and she was like, oh, let's read this cute little book. It has a pink cover. We should read it. We all sobbed our eyeballs out. Next, we have another young adult romance. This one is by K.L. Walther. It is called The Summer of Broken Rules, and this book was so much fun. I read this in, I think, 2 days as someone who's not a super fast reader. It takes place on, I think it was Martha's Vineyard, and they're all on an island. They are there for a wedding, and there's this game of assassin going on, and they're making alliances. There's secrets. Our main character, she has a crush on a boy that is involved in the wedding party, and they kind of team up together. Who doesn't love a little bit of forced proximity and a game? Okay, so the last one I actually apparently do not have on my Kindle. I totally thought I did, but that is Out on a Limb by Hannah Bonham Young. Oh, this book was perfectly done. I will go ahead and say it does have a pregnancy trope, but it is the best pregnancy trope you could ever read. If you are someone who does not enjoy reading about a pregnancy trope, I would still say read this book because it is done 100% perfectly. Watching our two main characters come together and bond over a mutual struggle that they deal with, but then also growing closer as they are there for each other throughout the pregnancy and they learn about each other. It's amazing and it is perfect. 5 stars. This book was 5 stars. I finished it in a day, didn't want to put it down, could not stop reading it. Those are the 10 books that I put on my list, but I do have a few more that I want to mention, and that is just anything written by Emily Henry. I love all of these books, every single one, and would recommend every single one of these Emily Henry books. Hot take, People We Meet on Vacation is probably one of my favorites. I think Happy Place is number 1, and maybe Funny Story is number 2, but People We Meet on Vacation is very close, if not being my number 2. I love the ones that have like bookish characters in them. Like we have authors, we have publicists, and she has a new book coming out this year as well. I would highly, highly recommend anything written by Emily Henry because I have not ever been let down by one of them. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. I know it wasn't a super long one, but when I went through all the romance books that I read, I realized that there's not as many as I thought that I would really recommend. So I wanted to give you guys my top favorites, let you know which ones are actually good, and make this video so that you can read a romance book for Valentine's Day, before Valentine's Day, after Valentine's Day. Thank you so much for watching my videos and for following me. I really, really appreciate you. I'll see you next week. Bye!